You know, there is a myth most people carry like a heavy bucket in the dark. They believe that giving is the doorway, and receiving is the reward on the other side. They think, if I give enough, if I sacrifice enough, if I empty myself completely, then life will finally fill me. But that is the misunderstanding. It sounds noble, it sounds spiritual, it sounds like love. And yet, for countless people, it becomes the very spell that keeps them trapped in lack. Because giving and receiving are not two separate doors. They are one current, one tide, one eternal movement of consciousness. And when you do not understand that movement, you can give until your hands shake and still feel poor inside. You can pour yourself out until you are hollow and still feel like nothing pours back in. Not because life is cruel, but because consciousness only multiplies what it is. My name is Abdullah. For decades, I taught a principle that sounded like madness to the anxious mind and sounded like home to the awakened soul. Even my most famous student, Neville Goddard, struggled to hold it at first, because it asked him to step across an inner threshold. It was simple, but it was not easy. I told him, you cannot give what you do not have, and you cannot receive what you refuse to become. Most people are trying to give from poverty consciousness. They are trying to gift abundance while secretly assuming scarcity. They are trying to offer peace while living in worry. They are trying to spread love while feeling unworthy of it. And poverty consciousness, no matter how much it performs generosity, can only create more poverty. Not always in money either. Sometimes it creates poverty in energy, poverty in rest, poverty in self-respect, poverty in hope. But when you truly understand the mechanics of consciousness, you discover something that changes the entire story. Giving and receiving are one motion, like breath. Inhale and exhale, night and dawn, the river and the sea. Those who grasp this become channels through which abundance flows, quietly, steadily, naturally. And yet, before that flow becomes effortless, you must face something most people refuse to see. You must look at the consciousness you are giving from. So let me take you back to a particular year, a particular street, a particular doorway. It was 1931, New York City, West 72nd Street. The air carried the tension of the times, and the streets held the weary footsteps of those trying to survive. A young man walked into my lecture hall. He was a dancer. His posture carried discipline, but his eyes carried uncertainty. His name was Neville Goddard. He had been told about an Ethiopian mystic who taught ancient wisdom, and he arrived the way many arrive. Desperate, broke, searching for a technique. He wanted a formula. He wanted a method that could rescue him without asking him to change who he was inside. But before I would teach him anything about wealth or success or what people call manifesting, I gave him the first law of awakening. I said, Neville, you must first start with self. Find self. Do not be ashamed of the being you are. Discover it and start the changing of that self. You see, Neville believed he knew who he was. Most people do. But we do not truly know until we look without flinching. And when I looked at him, I saw a young man afraid to receive. He believed he was not worthy. He believed poverty was somehow more spiritual than abundance. He believed struggle made him good. Yes, he was kind. Yes, he was generous. But he gave with a closed hand and a fearful heart. He gave as if love must be purchased with pain. And that is where the first threshold appears for you too. Because the problem is not giving, and the problem is not receiving. The problem is the consciousness from which you attempt either one. So I told him something that still echoes like a bell through the chambers of the psyche. If you are afraid to give, I said, it is a sure sign your consciousness of God is very small. You believe you have wrenched away from the source all you can possibly get, and you will not let it go. But if you know you are a medium, a channel, a vessel through which all good flows from the infinite to man, then you understand something soothing and permanent. As long as the channel is open, there is plenty of substance to flow through it. Now listen gently. This is not a lecture meant to wake you up. This is a story meant to let you soften into truth the way a leaf softens into water. I called these the 7 laws of conscious circulation, and each law, when held calmly, becomes like a lantern in the forest of the mind. The first law, the closed hand, creates poverty. Here is the paradox that confuses the literal mind. The people who give the most often receive the least, not because giving is wrong, but because they are giving from the wrong state. Imagine someone who says yes to everything. They give money they do not truly have to give. They give time they cannot spare. They give energy they never restore. They run like a candle burning at both ends, and then they wonder why their world feels dim. When someone like that comes to me and asks, "Why am I always in lack despite my generosity?" I ask a single question. When you give, do you feel afraid? And almost always, fear is sitting right there, like a shadow at the edge of the room. They realize that every time they hand something over, a thought follows. Now I will not have enough. Every kindness is haunted by anxiety. Every gift is paired with self-erasure. There it is. They are giving from a consciousness that believes there is not enough. They are affirming scarcity with every trembling act of sacrifice. And here is the deeper truth. The closed mind can receive no more than the closed hand. If your mind is shut up, gripping the seed of truth, it cannot grow. It cannot multiply. You must give to have, yes. But you must give from abundance consciousness, not poverty consciousness. The old idea of sacrifice becomes a new idea of giving when you understand what is actually being offered. What you offer up is not the object, it is the state. And consciousness creates after its kind. When a man gives from fear, afraid the well will run dry, he is declaring lack. And then reality, faithful as a mirror, reflects that lack right back. But when a man gives from fullness, knowing he is a channel through which infinite supply flows, his giving becomes a declaration of abundance. And reality must conform. This is why Neville later taught that assumption hardens into fact. The state you occupy is the world you walk in. The second law, you cannot give what you do not have. Now here is where many spiritual teachings drift into danger. They tell people to give even when they are in lack, to prove faith through depletion. They mistake the martyr for the mystic. They confuse emptiness with holiness. But I taught Neville something different. I told him again, calmly and firmly, you cannot give what you do not have. Oh, you can hand over coins. You can overextend your hours. You can exhaust your body trying to be good. But you cannot give wealth consciousness while living in poverty consciousness. You cannot give peace while you are anxious. You cannot give love while you feel empty. Because what you give is not the thing. What you give is the consciousness. If your inner world is lack, then lack is what you spread. Lack is what multiplies. Lack is what returns. Think of someone taught that spirituality means giving away everything. So they do it. They give away savings. They give away weekends. They give away the last drop of strength. and then bitterness grows like thorns in the heart. Resentment rises. They become exhausted and angry at the very people they tried to help. The problem is not generosity. The problem is the consciousness beneath it, obligation, guilt, and the belief that love must be earned through sacrifice. So here is the truth I taught Neville, and I offer it to you like warm water. To give health through understanding, you must first possess health consciousness. To give wealth, you must first assume wealth. To give love, you must first be love. This is not selfishness. This is divine law. You cannot give wholeness from brokenness. You cannot channel abundance while believing in lack. When someone truly understands this, something tender happens. They stop compulsive giving. They stop trying to purchase worthiness. They spend time finding self, just as I told Neville. They observe their inner world without shame. They begin what Jung would later call a kind of honest encounter with the shadow, the hidden fear, the hidden unworthiness, the hidden bargain beneath their kindness. And as they see it, the spell begins to loosen. Then they do what creates real change. They assume abundance first. They live in the end. They occupy the state of the abundant self, and from that consciousness, giving becomes effortless, joyful, natural. Receiving becomes natural too. Not forced, not begged for, simply allowed. The third law, the channel must be open. Here is the secret most people never discover. You are not the source. You are the channel. And a channel does not hoard. A channel flows. When Neville first came to me, he was trying to be the source. He tried to create wealth through willpower, technique, strain. He tried to wrestle reality into obedience. But I taught him, there is nothing which can separate you from the source of all good. What you give is not yours, but the Father's. Thus, you cannot be impoverished by letting go of it. Think of a pipe with water flowing through it. The pipe is not anxious about being empty, because it is not the origin of the water. It is the pathway. But if the pipe tries to keep the water, what happens? It blocks. It stagnates. The flow stops. This is what happens when you give from fear or hold from fear. You stop being a channel and try to become a container, and containers run dry, channels flow. I told Neville, fear not. It is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. The kingdom is within you, and you can possess it by entering into co-partnership with the infinite. When you understand this, giving and receiving become the same movement. You are not giving your resources. You are allowing infinite resources to move through you. You are not receiving from the world. You are receiving from consciousness itself. Consider someone who heals, teaches, or counsels. If they live in anxiety, if I give too much time, I will have none left. Their work becomes strained. People sense the tension. Money arrives irregularly, energy collapses. But when they shift and they understand, I am not the healer, I am the channel through which healing flows, everything changes. Their practice steadies. Their energy returns. Their work becomes clean, clear, alive. The channel opens, and life flows. The fourth law, giving reveals your consciousness. Now here is a mirror, a true mirror, and you do not need to judge what you see in it. Watch how you give, because giving reveals consciousness. Do you give with resentment? Then poverty consciousness is near. Do you give with fear? Then you believe in lack. Do you give with superiority? Then you are trying to prove worth. Do you give with obligation? Then you are living in bondage. But when you give from wholeness, from overflow, from genuine abundance consciousness. Giving feels effortless. It feels like fruit falling from a ripe tree. Neville struggled with this at first. He wanted to appear generous even when fear was hiding in his chest. He wanted to seem abundant even when he felt small. But I told him again, gently and firmly, do not be ashamed of the being you are. Discover it. Start with self. This is uncritical observation of self, not condemnation, not performance, just truth. When Neville truly looked at his giving, he found something uncomfortable. He was giving to get. He was helping to be helped. He was kind as a bargain. It was not giving. It was trading from poverty consciousness. And because consciousness creates reality, reality mirrored him perfectly. He met people who took. He met situations that disappointed. He met outcomes that confirmed his inner belief. I do not have enough. So I told him the corrective that sounds simple but changes lives. In order to have, we must give. But we must give from having, not from needing. Pour love from fullness, not from emptiness, hoping to be filled. And you will see the law work like gravity. Quietly. Certainly. You receive what you give multiplied, not the object, the consciousness. The fifth law, receiving requires worthiness consciousness. Now we come to the place where many people sabotage themselves without realizing it. They pray for wealth, but assume unworthiness. They desire abundance, but feel guilty receiving. They want prosperity, but believe struggle is more spiritual. And so they remain in lack, no matter how much they give. I taught Neville, do not be ashamed ever of the being you are. Discover it and start the changing of that self. Because shame blocks receiving. Unworthiness blocks receiving. Guilt blocks receiving. You cannot receive what you believe you do not deserve. You cannot accept abundance while assuming poverty is your destiny. Let me tell you the lesson I gave Neville that knighted his mind into a new shape. It was 1933 during the Great Depression. Millions were unemployed. The world felt like a cold room with no fire. Neville's brother sent him $50 and paid for his passage to visit home in Barbados, first-class accommodation. But when Neville went to the steamship company, they told him, "We can only accommodate you third class. You may use first-class areas during the day, but you must sleep in third class." He came back and told me, and I said, "Who told you that you are going third class? You are in Barbados, and you went first class." Then I shut the door in his face. It sounds harsh, but it was an initiation, because I was not arguing with the ticket agent. I was arguing with Neville's consciousness. You must assume you are worthy of first class before reality can give you first class. If he accepted third class within, he would live third class without. But if he occupied first class, reality would have to conform. And on the morning the ship sailed, the agent told him, "Mr. Goddard, we have a cancellation. Now you can go first class." That is the power of assuming worthiness. Not arrogance, authority. The calm authority of knowing who you are. Neville learned it so deeply that later, when he was drafted into the army and wanted an honorable discharge, he did not beg, he did not plead, he assumed. He slept in the state of being home in New York City, free as a civilian. In imagination, he walked through his apartment. He touched familiar objects. He felt the reality of already being done. At 4 a.m, he had a vision. A large white sheet appeared with the word "disapproved," signed by his colonel. Then a hand scratched it out and wrote "approved" in bold script. A voice said, "That which I have done, I have done. Do nothing." 9 days later, the same colonel called him in and honorably discharged him. This is what happens when you assume worthiness, when you receive not from begging, but from knowing it is already yours. The sixth law, the law of tenfold return. Now let me share a law that many misunderstand, because they hear it with a greedy ear instead of a conscious ear. The thing that we offer up is that which we get back tenfold. Most people think this means, if I give $100, I will receive 1,000. And sometimes, on the surface, it can appear that way. But the deeper law is this: it multiplies the consciousness, not the object. If you give from abundance consciousness, you receive tenfold abundance consciousness. If you give from lack consciousness, you receive tenfold lack. This is why I said, every time I can prove the law for another, I receive more than I gave. Not because they repay me, but because truth consciousness returns multiplied. So here is the practice I taught Neville, and it is gentle when you do it calmly. Before giving anything, money, time, energy, check your consciousness. If you feel fear, pause. Shift first. If you feel obligation, pause. Return to fullness. Then give from overflow, and let the law do what it does without strain. I once had a student who believed that the accident of birth denied him opportunities forever. He believed the world was structured against him. He called himself a secondary citizen. I told him, there is no cause outside the arrangement of your own mind. Start with self. Find self. Do not be ashamed of the being you are. Discover it and start changing that self. It took him nearly 3 years of steady inner work. Not frantic, steady. And then the results arrived as naturally as spring. He showed Neville his office on Wilshire Boulevard, beautiful and well-appointed. He showed his annual net income, $250,000. Not because the world suddenly became kind, but because consciousness changed. The seventh law, becoming the channel of infinite supply. Now we come to the final principle, and it is the most restful of all. The goal is not to give more, and the goal is not to receive more. The goal is to become the channel through which infinite supply flows naturally. Not a container hoarding, not a martyr sacrificing, a channel. When you study and realize there is nothing which can separate you from the source of all good, you know what you give is not yours, but the Father's. This changes everything. You are not giving your money. You are allowing the infinite to give through you. You are not receiving from people. You are receiving from consciousness itself. And when you become this channel, life becomes quieter inside. Giving becomes natural, not performative. Receiving becomes natural, not guilty. Fear fades because you are no longer depending on fragile circumstances. Gratitude replaces anxiety because you begin to notice the flow that has always been there. As long as the channel is open, there is plenty of substance to flow through it. This is the state I am inviting you into. Not more effort, more alignment, not more strain, more surrender to law. Integration, the 7 lanterns in the night. So here you are at the end of the 7 laws, standing at a threshold. The closed hand creates poverty because consciousness creates after its kind. You cannot give what you do not have because you are giving consciousness, not objects. The channel must be open because you are not the source, you are the medium. Giving reveals your consciousness, exposing lack or abundance. Receiving requires worthiness consciousness, because you cannot accept what you believe you do not deserve. The law of tenfold return multiplies the consciousness, not the thing. And becoming the channel means living as the vessel through which infinite supply flows. And now, listen. Let the core message sink in slowly, the way sleep sinks into the body. Giving and receiving are one movement. Giving and receiving are one movement. Giving and receiving are one movement. When these principles integrate, something soft and powerful happens. You stop the anxiety around money. You stop the resentment around giving. You stop the guilt around receiving. You become what I taught Neville to become, a conscious channel through which abundance flows freely in both directions. In daily life, it looks simple. Someone asks for help, and you give from overflow, not fear. You do not panic about losing yourself, because you know the source is not fragile. Money comes, and you receive it with calm gratitude, not shame. An opportunity appears, and you recognize it without desperation, because you are living in the end. You occupy the state and reality conforms, not because you are manipulating life, but because you are aligning with law. And now, as your eyes grow heavy, imagine this as a dream scene. You are walking through a moonlit forest. The trees are tall, ancient, and quiet. A silver path winds ahead, and you can hear a river somewhere nearby. In your hands is a small cup, a grail-like vessel. At first, you clutch it tightly, afraid to spill a single drop. But the tighter you grip, the heavier it feels. Then, on the path, you meet a figure, an oracle calm and unmoved by your fear. The oracle does not demand. The oracle simply mirrors. And the oracle says softly, "You are not the source. You are the channel." You loosen your grip. The cup becomes lighter. The air becomes warmer. You step to the river, and you lower the cup into the current. The cup fills without force, and when you lift it, water continues to flow around it, not against it. You understand, in the language of dreams, what the mind struggles to accept in daylight. The river is not offended by your receiving. The river is not depleted by your giving. The river moves, and you move with it. This is the alchemy. This is the initiation. This is the threshold you were born to cross. So I tell you one last time, in a tone meant for sleep and for awakening. You cannot give what you do not have. You cannot receive what you refuse to become. You are not the source. You are the channel. Now breathe as if you believe it. Slowly, gently. Let your shoulders soften. Let your jaw unclench. Let the nervous system learn the truth. And as you drift, take this as a ritual closing. Quiet, steady, sure. Find self. Discover the consciousness you are living in without shame. Change that self. Assume the consciousness of the abundant channel. Give from overflow. Receive with worthiness, and step, peacefully, inevitability, into the role you have always carried in the collective story. A vessel, a mirror, a channel, an open passage for the infinite to move through you. Sleep now, as if the river has already and always been flowing.